I'm Drew.
And I'm John. This episode and every future episode is dedicated to all the horror hounds and smokers out there who want to expand their knowledge of the genre and have a good time.
If you have Shudder, then odds are that you've seen Superhost. If not, you need to fix that immediately. John and I can't urge you enough. Great movie. We're going to discuss the indie film in all its glory, and later we have a special guest with us, the director of Superhost, Brandon Christensen. He's going to spill his guts to us in an exclusive interview. All that and more today on High on Horror. Interviews, reviews, and the latest news all rolled into one. Now it's time for Strain Wreck, the segment where John and I discuss which strain we're getting wrecked on in each episode. Today, I have no idea what the fuck we're smoking. John, tell us.
Oh, geez. So, I found an old grinder that's been sitting around for about 3 or 4 years and has some ground up weed in it. I don't have a clue as to what the hell strain it was. It was probably one of those, where they tell you it's headband or sour D.
It's fucking brown, bro.
I know it. Well, now it's brown. It wasn't brown when I got it.
It looks like you soaked it in tea.
It looks like I got that 4 fingers of Colombian dirt weed from Tom Matthews.
Well, I got a little surprise here. I got a blunt of it.
What? Oh my God.
I got a blunt of it.
Look, I told you I hit this in my bong the other night and I only packed it once because it kind of has no taste to a slightly bad taste. I can't, whole blunt.
What's wrong? Why are you, now you're making me second? I thought it was a good idea. Now you're making me second guess. Why is the blunt a bad idea?
Oh man, I'm going to end up like, how, back in the day where you didn't have money and you had to like resin hit your bowls and then you get a headache 2 hours later. I feel like that's exactly what's going to happen with this.
Well, we're going to smoke some fresh shit afterwards. If it's that bad of an experience, we're going to definitely smoke. We're going to smoke some good shit afterwards either way.
Well,
go ahead, man. Yeah, spark it up.
This up.
Light it up. Let's see how this goes. What do you think?
It really.
John's hitting the blunt right now.
It kind of has like no taste. Oh, I'm getting a slightly bad aftertaste.
Right when you said it doesn't have a taste, you follow it up with bad aftertaste. There it is.
It's harsh as fuck.
All right, here I go. I'm gonna hit it now. Here we go. You good?
Oh man,
you alive
that is
there?
not good.
Hold on. Let me hit this. Hold on. All right, here we go. Okay, so right away, I'm tasting the game. I'm tasting the black cherry game. Hold on, let me hit this again. You're right, it has no flavor.
It has like a,
oh, shit.
It has a terrible aftertaste. It hits harsh as fuck.
Yo, it tastes like fucking twigs.
Tastes like twigs.
All right, look, we're sparked up.
My man, are you out there just like you tasting twigs? Like,
you told me that's that fucking shit we're smoking. Look, we're already sparked up, dude. Let's get going. What's going on in horror history?
This week in horror history.
So this week we got a lot of films celebrating anniversaries. David Cronenberg's Shivers, Silver Bullet, Black Christmas, Puppet Master, Behind the Mask, The Rise of Leslie Vernon,
Yeah.
Pumpkinhead, The Fog, Wes Craven's New Nightmare. But the two I wanted to focus on from that list was Black Christmas and New Nightmare. I praise Black Christmas, and you know how much I hate those fucking whatever they are called, reimagining, remakes, reboots, whatever.
Whatever, yeah.
I love Black Christmas. It's a lot like Halloween, even though Bob Clark tries to claim that John Carpenter stole everything from him for Halloween. But, I mean, there are some similarities, but like Joe Bob pointed out, the POVs, they're both the killer, but one's a guy getting into a house and hiding, and the other's a 6-year-old child killing his sister. But, I mean, Black Christmas, it's also, again, not to continue, well, I guess to continue the comparisons to Halloween.
It's a home invasion.
It's a home invasion. Yeah. There's really no motive. The obscene phone calls are hilarious.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I don't know if I would have really been as upset at the phone calls as everybody else was, but holy hell, dude, what a week this is. Like you just said, all those movies you just named off, I'm like, damn, like that's a lot of that's a heavy list. That's just good movie after good movie. But yeah, Black Christmas is such a classic. Bob Clark, who later did A Christmas Story, really tackled the holiday on both fronts here. You know, A Christmas Story is one of the elite best Christmas movies ever, and then Black Christmas is one of the best slasher films ever, and it's a Christmas movie. But here's the thing: I don't know if I ever told you this or not. Oh God, you're passing me this fucking blunt. I don't know if I ever told you this story or not, but the first time that I saw Black Christmas, I actually didn't like it. Believe it or not, I was so disappointed with it. I expected so much of it because it kept getting talked up by everybody, and by the time I saw it, I was like, you know, that's it, you know. But I think the problem was that I had seen it too late. I had already kind of gutted the slasher genre from back to front, and that was just one of those movies that I never got to.
You're supposed to like front to back though.
Jesus. Anyway, so to go back to a movie where really like kind of nothing happens like Black Christmas, I was kind of like let down. But then as the years grew on, I finally, you know, it finally clicked with me, and I love it now. I've watched it every year on or around Christmas for the last 7 or 8 years, and I'm going to continue to do so.
Yeah, and Black Christmas, it has John Saxton from A Nightmare on Elm Street. But my favorite character in the movie by far is Margaret Kidder as Barbara. I feel like she's easily the best character in Black Christmas.
You know, I'm terrible with names, but I actually think that my favorite characters in the movie would be the police officer that's always fucking with the other dude. Remember the fellatio scene? That scene cracks me up every
Yes,
time.
I forgot about that just until now when you mentioned that. That was pretty good. You know, I got this goddamn blunt, man. Like I'm over here drinking the greatest soda ever, Pib, and like it's not even washing away the aftertaste of this fucking.
No, it's really weird because like I'm hitting it and I'm not tasting anything but the wrap, and I'm like, oh, it doesn't have a taste. And then again, like you said, that aftertaste creeps up on you, and it just tastes like I'm smoking like the woods.
Yeah, it has like a smoked wood taste.
Here's a knowledge nugget: Black Christmas was filmed in 40 days.
What about 40 nights as well?
I don't know. Oh, okay. So here's something I wanted to ask you though. What'd you think of the Bart Simpson skin in the remake? Do you like it?
No. I don't like anything about anything after the original Black Christmas.
I mean, I appreciate this blunt. I appreciate the remake, the original one, the 2006 one.
That's better than
they tried to do something with it, and honestly, I'm not going to try to bring up Rob Zombie's Halloween on purpose here, but it's just a good example. I appreciate more what Black Christmas did with the story than what Rob Zombie did. Like, I feel like that origin story, it still wasn't great, but it was a better origin story for, I think, Billy. Like, you know, they did the same thing Rob Zombie did. They gave a backstory to a character who had no backstory.
It's funny, I was going to compare that and not be any kind of judgment on Rob Zombie, but I was going to say it was a lot like the Halloween one, where it was like, but also I feel like both of those movies are better without a backstory.
I think that's now that we've seen the backstories, you know, I think that we can agree that that's true. The movies are better without them. Sometimes you don't need all that. You don't need the gaps filled in.
And to jump over here to New Nightmare, and I know 3's your favorite of the Nightmare on Elm Street series. Where do you have New Nightmare?
Yeah, New Nightmare is probably my third favorite. In my top 3 of the Nightmare films, Dream Warriors 1, the original 2, and New Nightmare 3. That's my 3. I think those are if I were doing, like, I do it often, like once a year at least, I'll do like a Nightmare on Elm Street marathon, and those are the 3 that I'll put on. The only like time that I won't put them on is when I realize, like, oh shit, it's been a while since I've seen like 2 and 4 and 5, you know, so I'll go back and watch those.
You know, I was thinking it's kind of funny. I have New Nightmares as my favorite. I said that when we talked to Vincent DeSanti. I have New Nightmares my favorite. But it's funny when I go back, like, and think about Chucky, Jason, Michael, and Freddy. The overall series of a better series of movies, I would say, is probably Nightmare on Elm Street.
100%.
But that's the one I watched the least.
100%. I said that with Sam. I said, well, part of it is that there's not as many movies as there are like Halloween and Friday the 13th. So like even like literally I think Sam actually my wife broke it down on a calculator, like the percentage of like what's good, and Nightmare on Elm Street heavily won. Like it won like completely over Halloween. There are some that are bad, but like there's not that many. So like the ones that are good, they're really good, and I think there's more good ones than bad ones. Whereas with Friday the 13th, I love them, but obviously that's not how everybody feels. And with Halloween's, they're definitely all the sequels are not all good. Like out of the Halloween movies, I would pick maybe 4 movies out of that one, that I think are like really actually good movies.
With Nightmare, I'd say after the 4th one, minus New Nightmare, that's where the cutoff is. But there's also a lot less. And I feel like Nightmare on Elm Street after 3 it slowly declined until New Nightmare. Whereas, like, if you look at Halloween, like, it just becomes a sharp drop-off in the quality.
Yeah, it was like Halloween 1 was up there.
But it's funny, because it's also after 4. But
Yeah, Halloween was up there, and then 2 was like, okay, not as good, but okay, it was good enough to keep us invested, like it was a good movie. And then 3, which we're talking about today, just kind of crashed. That was it. And then they came back with 4, and the series was never the same. But like Nancy says, every kid knows Freddy. He's like Santa Claus or King Kong, and she's right. New Nightmare rocks. I don't like the trench coat though. I've told you this before. I cannot get behind it. I can get behind the glove. Look, I can get behind the glove and the sweater and the leather pants even. I can get behind the leather pants. I can get behind the rock star pants. But I can't back that coat. Freddy just looked silly to me, like a poor man's Darkman or something. But yeah, top three in the series for me. Wes Craven really made sure that he put the nail in the coffin with this one. It's a cool concept, and he mastered it perfectly.
But I feel like it's by far the best makeup job on Freddy in New Nightmare.
I think the best makeup job on Freddy is Freddy versus Jason. So I think in the Nightmare series, I would agree with you. But overall, I think in my opinion, Freddy looked the best in Freddy versus Jason.
That's fair. I'll agree with that.
Favorite scene in the film in New Nightmare?
When he's dragging Julie up the wall.
Say hospital scene, yep.
Ever play Skin the Cat?
Worst scene in the film. Mine is when Dylan is like, looks up and sees him like Freddy's like faces in the clouds. Like that. I don't know. I think it was one of those things where like it was a cool idea, but like the effects, it would be done better today. But I think that looks dated, and the movie otherwise doesn't look dated.
It's funny. Like I'm trying to think of like when I think of like worst scene, I'm thinking of something that stands out bad, and nothing really stands out. Maybe I don't know. Maybe the only thing I could think of is maybe Dylan when he's like standing on top of the like jungle gym or whatever, and he's just like reaching towards the sky. Maybe that, but I feel like I agree with you. Wes did a great job with New Nightmare.
Well, actually, while we're here though, I do want to bring up Cronenberg's Shivers. It's not his best film, but that film put us on the path of what's later to come with him, or what was later to come with him, I mean. And it's not a bad film, but Shivers and Rabbit are definitely like low-level works in comparison to what Cronenberg became. They're still very good and enjoyable films. And did you ever see Silver Bullet?
Yeah, I love Silver Bullet.
Yeah, I was going to say, I grew up with Silver Bullet.
Same. It's weird. It was the like one horror movie in my like house growing up that my dad loved it, my mom liked it, my sister loved it. So like that was never like an argument if like somebody flipped the channel and Silver Bullet was on. We're like, all right, just leave it on. Right.
Well, here's the thing. Like everybody who I know. Okay, so look. So I remember. I remember a lot of nights watching it, and watching it on TV and on VHS back in the day.
Just TV for me. I'm
sure it was on TV for me as well. I'm sure. I mean, I just remember watching it. Like it was on a lot, and but I don't know why. But it seems like a lot of people slept on it, and in all actuality, it's actually one of the best werewolf films ever made. Like, I've turned 3 people onto it, 3 friends who now love it, and one of them says it's their favorite werewolf film now, and all 3 of them said to me that they don't know why they never watched it, That was what I was just about to bring up to you was like, yeah, I feel that everybody who has seen it loves it, but there's people who haven't seen it, and I feel that I've talked to a lot of people who haven't seen it, and they say like, "Oh, I thought it was going to be dumb." So I don't know that I've looked trailers up. I don't know what the production was, or I mean, like what the promotion was that like the studio put out for that film, the promotions. But I don't know. Maybe it was marketed to look dumb, and that's why a lot of people haven't seen it because people have said I thought it was going to be dumb. That's why I never saw it. But then as soon as everybody watches it, I hear, "Oh my god, it's amazing."
Yeah, it's funny. It is one of the best werewolf movies, but even myself, like sometimes I'll forget about it, and then like you bring it up, and it's just kind of one of those movies you remember I guess don't remember watching a lot, but you watched a lot as a kid, and you kind of forget about it, and then somebody brings it up, and you're like, oh yeah. I mean, the cast is good. I mean, Gary Busey is good in it, and he's usually like sometimes way too over the top.
How did I know you were going to bring up the Busey?
I mean,
The Buse.
I mean, I would love to talk to Gary Busey. I feel like it'd be an amazing time.
I'm not going to disagree with that.
Especially if we're baked, or if we could get
Absolutely.
Gary Busey baked.
Oh shit, that would be. Okay, but
Corey Haim's in it as well,
yeah, and he did a good job. He was a good a good child actor for sure.
and Stephen King wrote it. Like I don't know why like kind of people forget about it.
Yeah, and you know what's crazy? It's actually based on the novella Cycle of the Werewolf.
Yep.
And I found that at the farmer's market like several years ago, and I read it, and I couldn't believe how much better the book was to the movie. As much as I grew up on the movie, it was one of those things like with Halloween, I always say to you, I don't think that a horror movie is ever going to surpass it. It was hard for me. I was like, the movie probably, I knew there was going to be differences. There's always differences from page to screen. But I was like, I didn't expect it to be like better. And I was like, holy shit, the book is, the novella is, it's like the one that I have, I don't think all of them are like that, but there's illustrations of like the werewolf and stuff. It's really cool. And it's not a long book at all. But what do you feel about the werewolf? A lot of people say that it looks like a bear, but I still think it's intimidating.
Yeah, he was pretty scary looking. I don't think it looks like a bear.
Yeah, people have argued that it looks like a bear, and I'm like, I can kind of see it, but like that's definitely still a bear that I would run from.
No. But you mentioned Cronenberg. What's your favorite Cronenberg film?
Okay, so that to me, that is a hard question because I've said this before. There's like on paper, if somebody asks me what's Cronenberg's best film, that's different. That's a different answer than what's my favorite Cronenberg film. My favorite Cronenberg film, by far, is Videodrome. That is the most Cronenbergian film. I love that movie.
I fucking love Videodrome. James Woods, hit us up.
But James Woods smokes too, I think. I believe James Woods smokes. Am I wrong about that?
I don't know. Either way, get on here, James.
Yeah, and my other Cronenberg, like the Cronenberg film that I think is actually his best film is by a landslide Dead Ringers. Though I prefer Videodrome and I would watch Videodrome like more times, Dead Ringers is an amazing fucking movie. But it's like Schindler's List. It's one of those movies so heavy that like you watch it once in a blue moon and it's a great watch, but you just like you kind of don't come back to it, and it doesn't come up often when you want to watch his movies because it's like you don't always want to go that deep. Like a lot of his movies are more visual, like Videodrome. But yeah, man, that's my answer.
Now it's time for Puff Puff Ask, the segment where Drew and I answer questions that you send us through Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at HighOnHorror420 and through email at HighOnHorror420@gmail.com.
Yo, man. Puff, puff, pass.
All right, so you'll be glad, John. Right now, I have packed us a bong of some good green to make up for that.
Thank God.
If
if this tastes like the other shit, man, you better get your money back.
No, trust me, this isn't 4 years old or anything like that. I'm going to start us off here with a question from a listener named Troy from Dayton, Ohio. Did we answer a question from somebody in Dayton before? We might have.
Dude, I have no clue.
Well,
it's all a blur to me.
He asked a good one that I know my answer is kind of going to be kind of basic, but it definitely gets the imagination going. Troy asks, if you guys could take one horror character and place them in any movie, what would it be? And my answer is that I would place the Evil Dead's Ash Williams and Freddy versus Jason. Think about that, if that happened. Think about how awesome that would have been. There actually was a 6-issue comic book series called Freddy vs. Jason vs. Ash back in 2007. But still, I just think, just pluck Ash right out of like Army of Darkness or even Ash vs. Evil Dead. Yeah, Ash vs. Evil Dead, do old Ash and just drop him right in Freddy vs. Jason. That movie just...
Right in Crystal Lake.
Yeah, dude. But the overall turnout for Freddy versus Jason is negative. I feel that if you dropped Ash in there, it would not have been negative.
I mean, who doesn't want to see Jason with the machete or Freddy with his claw fucking fighting the chainsaw? I mean, the boomstick ain't going to help him a whole lot, but he got that chainsaw. He can deflect shit. He can attack him. He could literally cut him up.
Yeah, we know who would have won, Ash, but seeing him face off against Freddy and Jason would have been great. But,
and the one-liners?
Yep, that's what I was going to say. The one-liners would have been fucking nuts.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good choice. One, I thought of was Leprechaun in a Child's Play movie. I got to thank Linda Porco cool. for that as like maybe a team-up movie. It could be a sequel to the Ash. He could have his whole series where he just fights different horror villains. He could fight Leprechaun and Chucky. You imagine him just cutting or shooting Chucky?
Oh my god. Yeah, that'd be pretty amazing.
But I'm kind of cheating because that's like two. But another one on a more serious note here I thought of is Dr. Loomis in the Nightmare on Elm Street series.
Oh man, that's
it kind of cool. Fits. He's a psychiatrist. You imagine if him and Nancy were like working together to fight Freddy.
So like, I'm baked, but am I like? Because either way, this is cool. Are we plucking Loomis out of Halloween and like he's taking care of Freddy as well now? Like he's
he's coming out of Halloween. He's going in. He's helping Nancy.
Okay. So we're not going like he never worked with Michael. He was just a nightmare character.
He's just.
Yeah, that'd be amazing. That'd be fucking awesome.
He's taking on. He's getting overtime.
I mean, he would not show up in fucking Jason's neck of the woods though. Because, motherfucker, you would have to shoot him 6,000 times and it still wouldn't work. You imagine, I shot him 6,000 times!
You don't know what death is.
No, I don't think Loomis would fuck with Jason.
But Nightmare on Elm Street, man, like, he's a psychiatrist. I feel like you could even add more to his character of him just, like, investigating the whole Freddy thing.
And with him being a good actor, it would actually add an element of, like, good acting to those movies.
It's not necessarily just Dr. Loomis, although I almost said that only he played him. That's the way I like to remember it.
I agree, though. I agree.
But yes, I'm talking about specifically the Donald Pleasance Dr. Loomis.
The only Dr. Loomis.
Yeah. And can we take characters out of a movie? If so, can I take Michael Myers out of Rob Zombie's Halloween?
Oh my god. Who would you put in place of him?
That's Rob Zombie's problem. Just get Michael the fuck out of there. Just make some movie about Halloween.
I think, no, if that was what I was going to say. If it wasn't Halloween, if it was a different movie, I think that I'd appreciate it a lot better. I just don't appreciate it because it's not the Michael Myers that I know and grew up and loved over the years.
So, we'll get on to our second question for a shit on Rob Zombie even more. Graham from Woodville, Florida wants to know which version of It we liked best, the 1990 miniseries or the It and It Chapter 2 version. I know for me, I know a lot of people don't agree. I like the movies better. I feel like the adult version was handled much better. In the 1990 series, the kids were really interesting, and then when they got to adults, even though you have people like John Ritter and you have some decent actors, it
was an all-star cast.
It was
a good cast.
It wasn't interesting. I feel like as the adults, where I feel like It Chapter 2, I did care about the adult stories. And again, it's an all-star cast of people. You have Jessica Chastain, Bill Hader. Who else was in part 2? Bill Skarsgård's back, but yeah, and James McAvoy was in it.
That was what I was going to say. Yeah.
I was trying to. I knew there was somebody else big in there, but
don't say it.
I'm not going to say it. I'll just continue on. But anyway, I like It Chapter 2 better. I always feel like just with it, none of the endings were satisfying. Like I felt real.
I would agree with that. I would agree with that.
This one was better than the giant spider, but it's just, I don't know. They kill it, but I don't know. It just feels very anticlimactic in all of them.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree with you that It Chapter 2 is superior than the 1990 version with the adults. The adult version and the 1990 version does fall flat. I feel that it isn't exactly. It's not so much better in It Chapter 2, but you get a bigger piece of the pie, and it's truer to the story. And I do feel that there is more character development. That was the thing with the 1990 version, was it just kind of felt like it was like just like one thing after another after another after another. It didn't like have a pace, and that's what really hurt it. Was like you needed those moments. Besides, what Ben hugging, Bev, and then it turns into Pennywise in the mirror. Like you don't really get many moments in that movie or series rather where it's like getting to know the characters. It's more just like they had a history and now they're back together and it's go go go.
Yeah, you kind of get their backstory as kids, but then when they're adults, they're just wherever they are in life. There's
Correct.
really no explanation.
Exactly. And yeah, so I'm gonna go with It Chapter 2, and I'm gonna also say that I go ahead, throw heads of lettuce at me, throw bottles of water at me, whatever. I think that Tim Curry is a great Pennywise and did a great job, but I think that Bill Skarsgård is superior. I feel that he's a better physical actor, and I feel that he looked better, and he was just a more overall scarier clown and more intimidating clown. I hate that when people use CGI against it and say, oh, they had to use CGI. Of course they did. He turned into a big fucking giant spider, and like he does all this other shit. Like
I guess Bill Skarsgård ain't that good of an actor.
yeah, right. It's CGI is good to be used as a tool, and I don't feel that those movies relied on it. There was a lot of it in those movies that isn't CGI, that's practical. So, I like those.
I mean, it still is a supernatural clown, so I mean, there's going to be CGI in it.
The CGI in everything, and especially a clown that can transform or an entity that can transform. Yeah, of course. So yeah, I'm going to agree with you. It Chapter 2 wins.
Yeah, like you said, a lot of people seem to kind of shit on Bill Skarsgård, but like him and Tim Curry is kind of like Jack Nicholson from '89 Batman and Heath Ledger from The Dark Knight in 2008. They're both very well played, but they're two different interpretations of the character, where Heath Ledger's is more like the anarchy part, and Jack Nicholson's more like, it's still the vicious crimes, but it's more the comedy aspect to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I mean, I can't argue that.
And it kind of almost goes with Tim Curry from 1990 being the more of the like joking it.
Yeah.
Versus Bill Skarsgård, where like he'll joke with you, but like it doesn't last long.
Yeah, I agree. And
he is savage. The fucking I'm not real enough for you. I was real enough for Georgie. I was like, damn.
yeah, he goes hard in that movie and in both movies. And the thing about him is that with Tim Curry's Pennywise, I feel that he just from the distance, I'm like, yeah, I'm not fucking with him. He's ugly looking, and even if he is funny, he's just
Bozo the clown looking motherfucker.
yeah. He just looks wrong, and that's where the Bill Skarsgård Pennywise differs, because he looks sweet and innocent. From afar, you can actually see the appeal. Like that clown with a balloon, offering a kid a balloon, I totally get it. Tim Curry, hell no. But him, I get it. So then when he turns it on and turns into like a monster and eats you, that's just pure evil, because it's just pure deception. Like Tim Curry almost knew that he was intimidating. He kind of like had this like sarcastic air about him. Bill Skarsgård's Pennywise didn't. He had like this like almost childlike attitude and mentality.
Yeah, and he horrified those kids in the house as at the end of the first one.
Oh yeah. I like the refrigerator scene when they're on the house on Nebold Street and he comes out of the
crawls
refrigerator.
out and then like all his limbs straighten out.
Yep.
I like that. And when was it Richie? Yeah, it went into the room with the clowns.
Yeah. Yep.
And there was a Tim Curry Pennywise.
Yeah. Yep. And then he sees like a doll of himself, and then Pennywise jumps out of the casket. Yeah. That was a great scene. All right. Well, yeah. I guess we're gonna move on here. So don't forget to write into us at High on Horror 420 on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, or you can email us at highonhorror420@gmail.com. Write us. We love hearing from you. last week's episode with Stacey Nelkin got us a lot of inboxes. We got a lot of messages. Last week, thank you all from the bottom of our hearts. Like all those messages telling us how hard you laughed at things. There were a couple that were kind of heartfelt, and it's really nice to know that we're reaching out to people, or that we're reaching people rather, and that people are actually listening, and that this show means something to people. So, thank you. We really love hearing from you. So please write your questions in, serious questions, dumb questions. Just don't ask us if we're submissive.
The answer is no.
Write to us. We want to hear from you. Thank you all for listening so much. Now it's time to get into our review / discussion of this week's film, Superhost.
Superhost is a 2021 film that's available now on Shudder. And if you haven't seen it, stop the episode here, go watch it, come back. It's an amazing movie. It kind of feels in the vein of Creep, if you've seen that, which is available, I still think, on Netflix. But anyway, it's written and directed by Brandon Christensen, and with their follower count dwindling, travel vloggers Teddy, played by Osric Chow, I hope I said that right, and Claire, played by Sarah Canning, pivot to creating viral content around their most recent superhost, Rebecca, played by Gracie Gillum, who wants more from the duo than just a great review.
Man, Gracie Gillum kills it in this movie.
Oh, she's so good.
She
kills it, pun intended.
The movie's good. The movie is really good up until her being in the film, but when she comes in the film, you just know right away, okay, the movie just went up levels.
Yeah, I mean, there's not enough good to say about her role. She just it's over the top, but it works. She's just super cheerful, but you can tell it's all just a facade. Mm-hmm. And then when it just kind of turns, I mean, she's great again in that role. I can't think of anything bad she did in this movie.
I agree. I think she stole the show, and I think that that the movie overall is filmed very smart. It was filmed very well, at low cost with high production value. The acting in the film is honestly, it's well done from everybody. It wasn't just Gracie Gillum. Everybody did a good job. Like you said.
Oh, for sure. And I mean, Sarah Canning playing Claire. Claire is such a bitch.
She is, man. She really is.
The
fake proposal thing, when she does the proposal, when she thinks the proposal's just for just to get views, that pissed me off. I was like, damn, you are heartless.
But I mean, even Teddy was doing it too, but at least I feel like his wasn't as egregious as hers.
But the way she grabbed the camera
after he does it, do it again.
Yeah, it holds the camera in his face and is like, oh my god, react, oh my god, this is the craziest day of my life. And I'm like, oh man, this dude's he's uploading videos of himself to everybody, how he's gonna secretly propose, and that's what happened. She turns it into a publicity stunt. It's that's heartless, man. And everybody, like I said, everybody did a great job of acting. They all compliment each other well. And Barbara Crampton is in the film. She has a small bit part, but it's a great part, and she does a great job. It's always great seeing her. She looks great in the film. Everybody had good screen chemistry, even when she was in the film. Barbara Crampton had good screen chemistry with Gracie Gillum. They get together well. As you mentioned with Creep, I can totally see that. I can totally see Creep in Superhost, especially after speaking to Brandon Christensen about it, because that when he said that, immediately I started thinking of movies like Behind the Mask, The Rise of Leslie Vernon, and Murder Party, and Man Bites Dog, and movies about psychos being recorded. And it got me thinking, and I'm like, I don't think there's been necessarily a movie about a killer or a psycho being recorded on camera that's been bad. I can't think of a bad one.
Airbnb host killing people.
But Superhost, it's suspenseful and it has good kills, and the gore. How about the gore? It's not overly gory, but it's definitely gory.
Yeah, for sure. And like I said with Brandon, with this movie, it's predictable, but it's not. I know I'm watching and I go, okay, I know what's going to happen. And then something gets thrown in and I'm like, oh, okay, they're not going that way. Wrong.
Right.
They did go that way. You just subverted me for like a minute here where I was like, oh, okay, they got me. That's not going to happen. Oh, damn it. I knew it was going to happen all along.
Yeah, here you go. It's like the scene in the typical cliche horror film when somebody like is like you're expecting the person to close the mirror and somebody's going to be standing behind them, and then like they close the mirror and nobody's standing behind them, but as soon as they turn around, somebody's standing behind them. Except it's done more cleverly. It's more clever.
Or like they'll bend down and the mirror goes out of the view. I just moved away from the mic, but I was saying, you know, like when they bend down and they go out of view of the mirror, then they pop back up and they're behind them.
Yeah, but it's like
this isn't. I'm not denigrating the movie for that. I feel like it's really well done.
that's what I'm saying. It does that, but in a more clever way. It's not. There is no mirror, trick in this movie. We're just talking about examples, but it's a trickery of you think some things are going to happen. And then you're like, oh, it didn't happen. And you're like, damn, it did happen. But you're actually like pleasantly surprised because it's not cliche and it's not something you've seen 1,000 times.
And I mean, I don't think Rebecca had the appropriate response back to how these people treated her, but I can get why she's not happy with them.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
She a creepy motherfucker, though. She's got cameras everywhere.
Yeah, when the cameras when she starts responding through like the cameras, like talking like on the intercom, I was just like, oh, this movie's gonna be like crazy. Like this chick is like, you knew she was batshit right away, but when you're like, oh wow, this is gonna get deep, you knew like right away with that.
And Teddy and Claire are not the brightest fucking people. Like she's already at this point made it aware that like she can hear everything because you stop talking and she responds immediately to them. Yet they still keep openly discussing out loud about how weird she is and how like they don't want to be around her. Like at that point, I feel like I'd be like, let's just text message each other.
Yeah, like it's like the breakfast scene, like when Osric comes down and he's in his underwear and Rebecca's making breakfast. Like after she leaves, they're openly talking about like how weird it was and like laughing, and I'm like, she's listening, like she's listening.
And it's funny because like as I said, like you almost find yourself rooting for Rebecca at the end because like these people just make bad decision after bad decision after bad decision, and like at it gets to a point where you're like, you know what, like
they become unsympathetic.
Like you're kind of like maybe not to that level, but like you're kind of getting what you deserve. Like
yeah, well, I guess to me, I think it's kind of unsympathetic. It's maybe that's a little hardcore, but I mean,
I know what you mean. Like
they get what
it just
they have
gets to a
coming to
point
them.
where you're like, you keep doing dumb shit.
Yeah.
Like why are you doing this?
Yeah, like
you haven't learned anything.
Yeah, like the part, like there's a scene clearly, like we won't give the whole movie
I was
away.
gonna say
We'll cut it off.
We can get into spoilers, I think, here. If you haven't seen it, like stop here. I feel like we could talk about like
we're gonna go into it. Okay.
Yeah.
So the scene where Rebecca's turning away and they're good to go home. And Osric says to her, what happened to the couple that stayed here before us?
Oh,
and that's when the movie shifts immediately. I know. I is it? Yeah, I cannot remember the names now to save my life, and I've seen the movie twice.
Yeah.
But yeah, is it Betty Lou? I think it's Betty Lou.
Betty and
Lou. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I think people can roast us if we're wrong, but I think it was she went by the name Betty Lou, but the male that she found was for Betty and Lou.
Yeah.
And whatever their last name
Correct.
was.
Yeah, when Teddy and Claire are clearly free to go. After
she even tells them, go ahead.
That's after Rebecca tells them to go, they're clear to go, and Teddy feels the need to provoke her with what happened to Betty and Lou. And right when that happens, that's when the mood shifts. Because I'm like, you're waiting for it the whole time. And then you're like, you dumb son of a bitch.
I know. Immediately, I was like, what the fuck?
Literally,
just leave.
It's just a massacre at that point. It really is. It's just them getting. It's just the rest of the small crew that there is just getting picked off one by one in a matter of like the last few minutes of the film.
Yeah, and like, the other thing that annoyed me is Claire. Was it Claire that had no, Teddy had the fire poker. Like, that dude annoyed me. Like, he had a fire poker. She has, a knife? It's a fire poker. It's twice. And yet she just walks up and stabs him and he does nothing. Like, I was like, yo, I would have held that out. He had the stairway. Just, like, poke that bitch.
I think that, Teddy was a lover, not a fighter.
Yeah, and I mean, just like as we were saying, like they're just so unsympathetic that, like, it's funny because Rebecca somewhat, I feel like, acts like the audience at that point and says to him like, "You couldn't just leave." Like,
yeah, and I mean,
and if anything, if you think about that, she's crazy and probably killed 2 people. My idea would be, get the fuck out of there, go to the cops, and then let them handle it. Like, it ain't my job to investigate. I'm gonna mind my own business.
Agreed.
Whatever happened to Betty and Lou, like, the cops could figure that out.
Get the fuck out of there. Like, and it was right when he said that, the mood, like I said, the mood just shifted, and that's when it goes downhill, and you're just like, that to me is when they become unsympathetic, because I'm like, y'all were like scared to get out of there, and then you have the chance. And now you're going to stir some shit up again. Like, none of your business. Get the fuck out of there. Like you said, let the cops figure it out. So at that point, when that's said, it's literally like a forehead slap moment where you're like, you dumb son of a bitch. So here we go. And I just, that to me is why I said unsympathetic, because I'm just like, that was a really dumb call, and they got what they asked for.
And it's funny because, like, that's one I didn't think about now. That was all that other one where I'm like, okay, well, clearly they're not going to go. And then I'm like, oh, okay. And then still they found another way to, like, trick it back into, no, they're not leaving. Because you're like, oh, she's going to, like, do something to stop them from leaving. Oh, she's letting them go? And I'm like, well, she's going to do something. And then Teddy opens his fucking mouth, and I'm like, what the fuck? Okay, now they really are going.
Yeah. And I was totally taken aback by it, honestly. Shudder's been giving us a lot of good stuff and letting us watch a lot of good things in advance, and we appreciate all that. And Superhost was one of them, and with our day-to-day lives and everything else that we've been asked to watch for everybody, like Superhost almost fell between the cracks. And that's why we felt it was important to dedicate an entire episode to the movie, because when I watched the movie, I was like, holy shit. Like,
it's really good.
Yeah, I was like, this movie is really fucking good. Like, it's really good. Like, I honestly, look, it's a small indie film, and I'm sure that there's more snooty critics out there who are going to be like, oh, well, this wasn't done this way or that way. But, like, look, I'm being straight with you. As a movie fan, and I'm not kissing ass because we talked to the director, I don't really have anything I can pick apart about. I really like the movie.
I was going to say, like, I would give it, like, an 8.5.
Yeah, it's a solid fucking movie, man. Like, it really was like, holy shit.
It's an enjoyable watch.
And like,
as we're talking now, like, I kind of want to watch it again.
I really wish that it had a bigger, promoting campaign, because I really wish that, like, more eyes need to see this movie. And that's the thing, that's the thing about indie films. They don't get the promotion budget that, like, Christopher Nolan films get, but that's why those, the indie movies last longer, because they're not seen by force. They're not seen by commercials and by billboards. They're seen by word of mouth. You don't just, like, get talked into something.
The views pile up over time, as opposed to, like,
you're seeing something that you're kind of just force fed as to, like, hearing, like, I'm hearing this is a good movie. And
versus, like, your typical summer blockbuster that it gets all its views in 3-4 weeks. With these indie films, you have people talk about it, then you have, like, people like us that might mention, then somebody else hears about it, then they mention it to somebody, and they just kind of pile up over time.
Yeah, like movies like The House of the Devil by Ty West.
I love that movie.
Hatchet by Adam Green. you know, and
We like Ty West and Adam Green here.
Ty West and Adam Green, yeah, they're great examples. Behind the Mask, The Rise of Leslie Vernon.
Love that movie.
Like all of these movies are indie films, and there's so many more. Like if I wanted to take the time to just list, but those are just great examples of movies that they're popular as hell, like a decade or more after their release. And it's because of word of mouth. It's not because they had the Hollywood budget to put billboards up and have a commercial every 2 minutes on Fox or CBS or whatever. Like like people down the line saw the film and recommended it. And then that's the film that people are still talking about 20 years later. And I really hope that that's the case with Superhost. I really hope that, because this is one of those movies that I feel that anybody can enjoy. Like, look, right now, if my wife was sitting home with like her girlfriends, I feel that they would enjoy that movie because they'd be cracking up at Gracie Gillum. I feel that if it was me and you or any other couple of dudes, you know, having some beer, smoking some bud, watching a movie, we would enjoy the shit out of it. I don't see a downfall here. I really wish that more people would watch this movie. Or I hope everybody sees this fucking movie. I really do.
And not to say the movies are at all similar, because they are not at all similar. But I was thinking, like, it's a violent movie, but it's also funny. And I feel like, to compare it to your poster up there, Ash vs. Evil Dead, again, the story's nowhere near similar, but they're both super gory. Ash vs. Evil Dead more, but it's gory and it's funny. Like, Nicole's not into gory stuff outside of maybe like the Saw movies, but like she liked Ash vs. Evil Dead, even though the TV series was so bloody and just gory. But it was hilarious because Bruce Campbell gets you sucked in. And Gracie Gillum is Rebecca. Like, it's the same way. Like, she's a sadistic motherfucker, but like, she's also like, you're just like,
you love her. You kind of love her in a weird way.
You're just weird.
Yeah, but it's like her quirkiness is so adorable that you're kind of like, oh, I like her, but you're like, but she is psycho. She is psycho.
I'm a superhost.
You know, but yeah, I think that yeah, I'm looking forward to a physical release of this movie. All the Shudder films,
Same.
All the Shudder films have releases eventually, and I forgot to ask Brandon about that, but you know, I really hope that there's a nice release of that coming out. Yeah. So, do you have anything else you want to contribute?
Nah, I think we can get into Burn and Learn.
Cool.
And that's the segment of our show where we fill you in on some behind-the-scenes facts about the movie we're discussing, and in today's case, Superhost.
Ooh.
Burn and learn.
First off, we want to thank Brandon Christensen for emailing us these facts that we're going to list here for Burn and Learn. These are exclusive to our show. These are not going to be found on IMDb or probably anywhere else you look. Okay, let's start. During production of the film, there was a beetle infestation causing a ton of delays while filming any scene in front of the house. They swarmed sunlight, so they had to make a hallway of flags just off camera when shooting outside to block the actors. Otherwise, the beetles would have landed on them and ruined the take.
Also, during production, the real homeowner had to come and fix one of the toilets. They told him not to worry, but he still wanted to. Speaking of toilets, the dumb joke, at least it was just a number one, was used by Brandon Christensen when dealing with an Airbnb host and was part of the reason the film was created.
There were several scenes reshot near the end of production because Claire's character early on was written to be too hard. They filmed new scenes to soften her up and let the audience in on where she was mentally earlier on.
The glowing eyes were not in the script, neither was Rebecca waving. In the script, Teddy sees a figure and waves, and it doesn't wave back. But because of the nature of filming, they shot them on different weeks, and Brandon Christensen was concerned that they wouldn't be able to see Rebecca very well in the darkness, so they added the eyes and said they could decide later. On early cuts, people liked the eyes, so they were left in, even though it doesn't really make sense. About a week before they delivered, Brandon's wife said he should lose the eyes and regret it, and now it's become one of the biggest talking points of the film with people.
The script was written for another house in the same area. It was a modern-looking house, open concept. When the pandemic hit, the owner of it stopped responding, and they almost canceled the film or moved the shoot to Canada. but a friend whose family owns a place up there offered their place up and let them shoot there for cheap.
Superhost had a crew of 6 and a COVID safety officer, which you're aware of. If you're aware of movie sets, that's barely anyone. Compared to his other films, it was probably a quarter of the size of other films.
Months after the shoot, they had to shoot some pickups, including the dead body of Lou and the cat. Brandon actually had his makeup done and bought some old people clothing so that he could play Betty. They filmed it, but he was the one on the ground dead, so he didn't see the footage until he got home and put it into the film. Had he looked on set, he would have realized how wrong it was and maybe could have fixed it. Instead, the payoff to the dentures, his mouth was supposed to be wide open and you would have seen the visual effects show no teeth, never happened.
The proposal location was a total fluke. They had permitted another area near a nearby ski hill. It was a solid 45-minute drive for the crew and would have been kind of a nightmare, and it wasn't nearly as pretty as the final location. During the first week of shooting, Osric and Sarah went behind the house at lunch. A 3 to 4 minute hike directly behind the house, they found that location, and they showed Brandon and the crew photos, and they realized they could bail on their permit and just run up there and steal the location. It was way easier and better.
All right, well, now let's talk to Brandon Christensen himself and go deeper into Superhost. Our guest today has produced horror films such as It Stains the Sands Red and the creepy horror flick Z, which he also directed. He's done visual effects on those films too, as well as The Pale Door and VFW and a whole lot more. And he's the director of Superhost, the film on Shudder that everyone is talking about right now. Welcome, Brandon Christensen. Thank you for being on High on Horror.
Hey, what's up, guys? Thanks for having me.
Okay, so I'm going to start off real quick with this. You're on High on Horror, and you worked on 2 Joe Begos films, VFW and Bliss. Are you a smoker?
No, I'm not. And actually, do you know it's wild? And I didn't know this until I worked with him, but his name is Joe Begas.
It's Begas, wow.
It's Begas, yeah. I found, because I'd been calling him Begos for a long time, and then when I was working with him and Josh was like, he said Begas, and I was like, what? What are you talking about? But yeah, totally. It's Begas, which was really weird. But no, I do not smoke. But that is funny.
Yeah, I just saw that you had done work on VFW and Bliss, and I had listened to a commentary on VFW, and he had mentioned how he's always smoking blunts, and I swear to God, it was like, I think that he was passing a blunt during the commentary. So I was like, I don't know, maybe, I thought maybe.
I definitely wouldn't be surprised for sure.
So I got one. All right. So what made you want to get into producing and doing visual effects and filmmaking?
Well, producing, like with It Stains the Sands Red. Thanks. It was kind of just an opportunity that presented itself, and I'd done a bunch of short films, commercials, music videos, things like that. But when Colin and Stu, the Vicious Brothers back then, when they were trying to do this little zombie film, and it took place in Las Vegas, where I live. It was just kind of one of those opportunities that I jumped on, and just tried to say, like, hey, let me help you make this, and I kind of dropped everything to push to sort of give myself a taste of kind of the feature film life, and that led to my first film, Stillborn, where I got to direct. So producing is just sort of something I've always done. Like, I've always produced my own shoots and stuff like that, because when you're doing a lot of low budget stuff, there's just never any money to actually hire someone. So just getting into the producing side of things was just sort of the clearest way into getting into features, really. And then with like visual effects, it was just another one of those things. Like, it was a necessity, like I would shoot stuff and I just never had the money. So I had to try and figure out how I could do certain things. It starts with like green screen or something like that. And then you're doing screen compositions, and you're doing, painting out things, rotoscoping, whatever. It just kind of becomes an extra skill set in your toolbox that you can kind of lean on when you're working.
Which do you prefer more, doing visual effects or directing?
I mean, they're totally different. It's like it would be like, do you, because like directing is such a all-encompassing thing. It's you. There's so much prep work. There's so much visualization beforehand. There's so much communicating on set and just sort of working with actors and working with your crew and everything to get sort of your vision on screen. Whereas with visual effects, it's kind of like an isolating thing. You're just sort of sitting on a computer and you're just doing it. It's more similar to writing because you're just kind of alone. And I mean, if it's my own film that I'm doing VFX for, like I'm the client. So there is no like, I'm not talking to anybody. I just sort of do it. Do I like it? No, got to fix it. When I'm doing something for other people like Aaron Kuntz or like Joe Begas and stuff, it's, there is still, you're kind of like working for someone. So, it can be one of those situations where like you do it and you think it's good, but they don't. And so you have to kind of like work and figure out that. So, I mean, directing, you definitely have the most control over things. So I would say directing is, that if I could only do one path, that would be it for sure.
Well, yeah, you're definitely on a roll, man. You're definitely on a roll, with your visual effects and with the films that you're directing. And speaking of visual effects, I wanted to ask you. I have to bring it up because VFW is just such a badass fucking movie. Can you tell us any cool stories about like being on the set of that film or working on the film?
I was actually brought on later. Like typically with the VFX, they'll be editing the film and then they'll need certain things done. Like I worked with them on Bliss first, and they had 5 or 6 shots that needed some paint outs and stuff like that. It was a pretty small thing, but they had already shot VFW when that happened. So they were like, hey, we got another movie that's we're just about to lock and all that stuff. So we might need more stuff, and so they came to me shortly thereafter, and they had I can't even remember how many shots. It was probably 10 to 15, but they just had sort of certain things that needed to be done, and yeah, it was cool. I mean, it was just it's nice to sort of become friends with filmmakers like that because they are constantly working. So you do have those opportunities. Like they have another film that they're working on right now, and I'll probably have a chance to do a little bit of VFX for them. But yeah, I mean, it's typically not something that I'm involved with from the beginning unless it's my own project.
Okay, okay. Have you seen VFW though? I'm assuming that you're a fan, since you've worked on it. 'Cause I mean, dude, that movie's amazing.
Yeah, it's cool. It's totally a Joe Begas film. Like it's done in his style, and and that's what I like about horror is that there's such a difference in certain filmmaker styles. Like if you watch Z or Stillborn or even Superhost, and then you watch something like Bliss or VFW, there's just a clear tonal style in how we do things. And so I think it's pretty cool that I think horror is so broad in that sense that you can have those two and still kind of be in the same genre.
Yeah, I agree. It was definitely a horror film, but I loved it that it was still like a nod to old school exploitation films. So that was one of the
Totally.
things that was really cool about it. All right, so let's get into talking about the reason you're here, though. Let's talk about Superhost. What was your inspiration
Sure.
behind writing that film?
When I was doing the film festival circuit for Z, I was staying in an Airbnb in Toronto, and when I got there, the toilet wasn't working, so I had to text the host, and I had to go through this whole process of getting something as simple as a toilet to be plunged. And so I hit up the host. He had the security people that work downstairs go up and check the toilet. They couldn't fix it, and eventually he had to go out and buy a plunger and come and fix it. And it was just one of those situations because the whole process with that place was automated. Like we're not supposed to meet. There's codes on the doors, very much like Superhost. And I had this weird conversation as he's plunging a toilet that I peed in, and it was just like it was just so awkward. It was like the most awkward small talk you can have. Like total strangers weren't supposed to meet, and he's plunging my pee. Um, and so I just sort of left that conversation, just sort of with that sitting in the back of my head. And then when I saw the film Creep, I was just like blown away by the idea of a serial killer that is completely charming and lovable. And so I sort of took those two ideas and I combined them, and just sort of, I wanted to have my own kind of Joseph type character that could do horrible things, but because they're so affable and they're funny and all these things, that you might really like them. So that was kind of the seed of the idea, and then it kind of developed into the social media part as well.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned Creep because Creep 1 and 2 are great films. John and I are both huge fans of those, and now that you mentioned that, I can
So
totally
good.
see, like the comparison. What I took away from watching Superhost was that people are so fake nowadays. Just to be popular, that when they're genuine, people don't believe them. It's kind of like a viral version of The Boy Who Cried Wolf in a sense.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think that's a really good way of putting it. Just that idea of just no one knows who anyone is. No one knows how to experience a genuine moment. Like the whole proposal sequence is just two people that don't know how to just put a camera down and just enjoy each other. So yeah, that's kind of like the thesis of the film. But yeah, it's just an extra layer that you ultimately want to get to the psychopath stuff, but to get there, you kind of need to spend some time with some characters and figure out who they are and whatnot. But yeah, that I think that you totally nailed it.
Yeah, and speaking of other characters, the cast in Superhost is amazing. Sarah and Osric do fantastic jobs. I hope I said his name right, Osric. But
Yeah, that's
okay, but yeah, honestly though,
yeah, Ozric. Yeah, it's all good. So,
honestly, if honest though, I think that Gracie Gillum absolutely steals the show. She's on a whole new level. She's batshit crazy, but it's hilarious in that dark humor way. What was the casting process like? Did Gracie audition, or did you have her in mind to play Rebecca when you conceived the project?
yeah. So I mean, with an indie film like this, when you have zero money, there is like the casting process isn't like a typical thing. We couldn't afford a casting agent or anything like that, so we basically just went to friends that we knew. Like I knew Sarah Canning because I'd worked with her on Z, and friends of friends, and like Osric Chow was my friend's roommate at the time, and so I had kind of a direct connection there, and we discussed it that way. And then like Barbara Crampton, I had been in emails with her before just about some other different projects that never went anywhere. So when I had this, I reached out and she just sort of jumped on board. And then Gracie was actually the last person to join the cast. And I had been talking to some other actors, and they just sort of were all booked. Like certain people were working on different things, and one actress, Sierra McCormick, who was in VFW, she was working on another film that was shooting at the same time, and so she said she couldn't do it, but she had a friend named Gracie Gillum, that would be perfect for the role. So I reached out, and she kind of connected us that way, and we just sort of talked about this character, and she totally was picking up what I was putting down, and she had worked with Disney and all this stuff. So I was just like, I was just really struck by her because she's this very kind of youthful, pretty face, but when you watch her Disney stuff, it's like that super highly elevated reality that she's doing. And I was just
Mhm.
like, oh, that's totally what we need from Rebecca, is just that like sense of, similar to how Teddy and Claire are just like insane when they're on camera. We need to have someone that's kind of insane off camera. And so it just sort of, it really made sense. And she came out and kind of, blew us all away.
Well, how much of her performance, Gracie's, how much of her performance was your instruction or direction, and how much of it was her just making it her own?
It's tough because I mean, having edited the film and stuff like that, I'm so close to it. It's hard to say where she begins and the script kind of ends. But I think that what she brought to it that differed from the script was just kind of a goofiness to it. Like and a little bit more of an emotional side too. Like with the interview scene that they have with her on the page. She was definitely a little bit more robotic with her answers, and how she had those freezing moments, where she's just, it's kind of like just kind of stops mid sentence. And what she added to it was just sort of her eyes slowly kind of phasing into this more emotional kind of recollection going on in her head. And I think that was something that, after we did it, we're like, oh, wow, like everyone kind of felt bad for her on set. Like they're like, something happened to this girl. got her like this. And I think that on the page it was just a little bit more mechanical, and it was almost like, I don't want to say the word alien, but there wasn't that just emotional resonance happening in behind her eyes. So I think that, plus just sort of the goofy kind of quirky when they first meet, it's almost like a Melissa McCarthy thing that she was doing. I think those kind of surprised us a little bit.
Well, yeah, so her performance was hilarious, like I said, and were there a lot of laughs on set? I imagine there had to be a good amount of outtakes.
Yeah, I mean, especially with her, that was the hardest part. Really, was she would do a take and it'd be really funny, but you'd be like, "Crap, I can't." We can't really use that. Like it, where she is right now, she can't quite be there yet. Like if she's like making breakfast for them and she's like all like frazzled and stuff like that, that's where the humor is going to be. But when you've got some of these more like earlier on kind of moments where they're just sort of having chats before she's truly kind of weird, it was just kind of finding the right tone where she could be slightly off, but not enough to like push them away that far, because you really need to kind of slowly bridge you to the craziness. You can't just go like, "Hey, I'm Rebecca and I'm crazy." It has
Right.
to be a slow devolution into where she gets. So it was just kind of like, you'd get a great take, you'd laugh, and you'd be like, "Wait, we need to like dial this down a little bit. Let's go to this. Let's try this, whatever." And even in the editing room, it was super hard because like there was great stuff, but we just couldn't use it because it was just either too much or too little. It was like finding that balance.
Well, speaking of good actresses, what's your favorite Barbara Crampton film?
Um, Chopping Mall is pretty dope. I think that's a fun one. I mean, Reanimated is the obvious answer,
Yeah.
but I don't know. I think Chopping Mall is just like it's just fun to watch. Reanimator sure is fine, but I think that Chopping Mall just has this perfect '80s aesthetic, and it's just this bizarre movie, and it has the best poster, and it's just kind of a fun ride. So I'll stick with that.
I'm gonna have to agree with you. Chopping Mall is amazing. It is. It's that '80s cheese, but it's still amazing. They just don't make them like that
Totally.
anymore.
Hmm.
All right.
Right.
Well.
For sure.
So how did you choose the house in Superhost that the film takes place in, and where is it located?
So we shot the film in Mount Charleston, Nevada, which is about like 25-30 minutes outside of Las Vegas. I had actually found a different house. It was much more modern and kind of open concept. And I'd found the owner, and we had talked about shooting there and everything, and he was down. And so I actually wrote the first draft of the script around this other house. And then as like the pandemic was starting and everything, he kind of just disappeared on me. And I was just like, crap, like I didn't, it's really hard to find someone that's willing to give you their house for a month, even if you're paying them. It's just like, it's such a huge inconvenience that I was really worried that we wouldn't be able to shoot the film, or we'd have to go to another city or something like that. And then I was just like blindly reaching out to a friend that I knew that had a place out there, and I was just like, "Hey, do you have any friends or anyone that might have a place that we could shoot at?" And she's like, "Oh, well, why don't you come take a look at our place? I'm here right now." And she took some photos of like the big living room window and all that stuff. And I was just like, "Holy crap!" And I jumped in my car and I drove up and met her, and I just sort of sat down with her and her family, and I was just talking about the film and what we wanted to do, and they were just like, "Yeah, let's do it. Screw it." And it was just like a total shot in the dark, and worked great because the house was awesome.
Yeah, it definitely is amazing to look at, especially with those large windows.
Yeah.
And Superhost, the movie is predictable, but it isn't. It kind of follows this formula, but you have these little twists that kind of make it its own movie. And there's scenes where I'm like, I know what's going to happen.
Hmm.
And it ends up happening, but not before you completely fooled me into believing that, okay, now it's not going to happen. Was that
Right.
something that you consciously wanted to incorporate in the film?
Yeah, I mean, audiences are pretty smart now. They've seen pretty much everything. I mean, when you're doing a horror movie or something like that, like you look at the movie poster for this and there's a girl with three faces and two of them are bloody. It's like, where it's going to go. That was one of the conversations we had earlier, was like, how much do we want to lead the audience before they even see the film on this? Like, do we want to make the fact that she's bad the twist? And it's like, No, because audiences are going to get that. The moment you meet her, you're going to go, "Oh, she's crazy." It's obvious. And I'm just, it's just kind of like the creep thing. It's like the movie's called Creep. The posters, the creepy looking up the stairs. He's backlit by the porch lights. Mark Duplass is going to do something bad. It's just implied. And so I was just, I definitely wanted to lean into that and just be like, it's not about her being bad or not. It's just a ticking time bomb. When it happens, it's going to happen. But yeah, I mean, so essentially what you're doing is you're just, I hate the term, but it's like you're subverting expectations as much as you can. So if you can set up something and then pull the rug out from under them, I think you can do that. Because anything that kind of just like what you were saying, it just leads you into thinking one thing and then another thing happens on your journey to get to that point that they're like, when you're watching this film, you're like, I want to see the psycho. I want to see the psycho. And when you've only got a cast of 4, you can only sustain that for so long. So you need to span that first 2 acts of the film to try and kind of lead them, make them guess a little bit before you ultimately get to the place that they were expecting. But yeah, it's just kind of like putting yourself in the audience's seats and just wondering what they would think and trying to go just a little bit in the other direction, at least for a little time.
Yeah, now you were talking about the creep poster with them backlit. It kind of reminded me about the scene where Teddy sees the glowing eyes out in the
Mm-hmm.
wood. Is that supposed to be Rebecca, or is it just something that he's just...
So that's actually a kind of a complicated answer because of the way films are made. So, in the script, there is no glowing eyes. In the script, Teddy goes out, sees something, he sees a figure. He waves to the figure, and the figure doesn't wave back. Now, when we shot the film, um, the first week we shot Teddy's side of it. So, because we didn't have Gracie yet, but you still have to kind of shoot things. So you're always shooting out of order. So we shot Teddy's side, we shot him waving, all that stuff. And then a week later, maybe 2 weeks, I can't remember which week we shot Gracie's side, but we were filming it. And my biggest concern, I was just like, the impact of seeing the figure out there needs to be immediate. Like you can't have a moment where you're like, what is he seeing? Oh, there it is. Otherwise the music cue isn't going to work and things like that. So uh, it was kind of like, okay, well, let's put something on her eyes so at least we know where she is, and then we can decide in post production if it works. And then like even the wave thing, she had a radio, and I was just talking to her from the balcony, and I was just like, hey, give a creepy Donnie Darko like wave at the end, and then she did that wave, and I was like, oh, okay, that was cool. And then when I was cutting the film, I just sort of I put in her wave and I pulled Ozric's out, and my main focus was just like, can't. So I mean, it's like a broader conversation about technology and TVs. Is that I might be able to see it perfectly on my screen when I'm editing, but then I give it to someone, I give it to you guys, you put it on your TV, and all of a sudden it's too dark and you can't see her shape or anything like that. There's just like, it's a really hard to just like make sure darkness works perfect. So that's why I was just like, you know what, I'm going to keep the eyes in, because at that moment in the film, you don't know anything. It's kind of in a vacuum. It works. It's a scene. It's creepy, whatever. But when you step back at the end of the film, you go like, well, wait, what was up with the glowing eyes? And it's just like I the answer is like kind of twofold. It's like, one, Sarah Claire says, you probably just saw an animal, and it's like when you see an animal at night, you can see the reflective eyes. Now, animals don't typically wave, so that wasn't originally part of it, but it was just such a creepy thing that it kind of just ended up staying. So like, I don't do test screenings and stuff like that. We just don't have any money, so I show it to a few people, and you get you kind of gauge responses from that. And everyone was always like, oh, I really like the glowing eye scene, and it's just like in a vacuum, it's cool. So the decisions were kind of made in that vacuum, and you didn't, and it sucked because like a week before I had to finish the film and deliver it to Shudder, my wife was like, you should remove the eyes. And I was just like, what? No, you can't do that now. It's been like 6 months. Like, I've made that decision months ago, and now all of a sudden you're just saying that? She's like, you're going to regret it. Just pull them out. And I was just like, no, I can't. And so out of principle, just to be against my wife, I kept them in. And now it becomes a thing that people ask about, and she was right. And it's like, at the end of the day, the moment wouldn't work if the eyes weren't there, because I can't trust everyone's screens to show the same thing. So, yeah, it's a super complicated answer, but it just kind of gives you an insight in one how indie films are just like thrown together and it's insane and everyone's running around with their hair on fire, and just that, like, technology does have an impact on what an audience is seeing in a film, like, when you're dealing with night. David F. Sandberg, he's got that YouTube account, Pony Smasher. He does a great essay, like a video essay called The Problem with Darkness. Highly recommend checking it out, because he talks about how darkness in horror movies is like impossible to do, because you never know what someone's watching it on.
Well, I will side with you and say that the glowing eyes looked amazing. It's definitely the creepiest part of the movie. And I have to say, sometimes I did not feel bad for our travel vloggers when they were in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not to the level Rebecca quite takes it, but you can kind of understand her anger. Claire talks a lot of shit on her and is trying to exploit her. Did you want to kind of have Rebecca be somewhat sympathetic in a way?
Yes, for sure. And I mean, that goes back to Creep, was just like the challenge became, can I make someone kill the main characters and have you rooting for them to do it? Like, that was definitely the idea going into it. And it's like, I mean, there's a protagonist and there's an antagonist. And I think, like, on the surface of the film, when you're looking at it, it's like clearly Claire and Teddy are the protagonists and Rebecca's the antagonist. But I think as you watch it, it gets a little bit more muddled, because you're watching Sarah's character, Claire, essentially want to use this person against her will, or not against her will, but against her knowing, really, just because she thinks she can exploit her for views. And so I think that her decision to do that, whether her decision is, justified or not, based on, like, she just wants to be able to take care of her and Teddy. Ultimately, she's just like, had they just shown up, enjoyed their vacation there, and left, they would be alive at the end of this film. It's because of the decisions they made to try and exploit this woman that led to their own demise. So it's like, I don't think there is a true protagonist antagonist relationship here. It is just sort of like shades of gray. And who do you think, it's definitely intentional that Claire is kind of the bad guy at the end of the film because of what she did.
It kind of, to an extent, has that feel of the Friday the 13th films, where the kids don't necessarily deserve to die, but they kind of are assholes and you don't feel bad for them.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's like Nightmare on Elm Street, too. Like, you don't go there to see what the characters are going to... You don't care what these characters are going to do. You want to see Freddy kill them in interesting ways. And so it is kind of similar to that, where, like, the villain is the reason you go to. I mean, like Chucky, all these films, they're all just sort of about the character that's been created and how they're going to dismantle these, the quote unquote protagonists. So yeah, it is a similar thing here. It's just like, you have to set up these characters to fall at some point. The goal as a writer and as a director is just like to make the audience not like sympathetic for them, but at least empathize with their situation and understand why they're doing what they're doing. And so the whole goal of getting Claire and Teddy's channel to just sort of you slowly pull back the layers, and they're not as successful as they portray themselves to be. They're bleeding subscribers. They can't pay their own bills. You're at least getting an insight into why they might make the decisions they make. That way, when it happens, you get it, even though it's the wrong, they made the wrong choice, but you understand it as a viewer.
Yeah, definitely. And just a off the wall question here. The date on Teddy's phone says Monday, March 20th, and the closest year to that date's 2023. Was that done on purpose, or was it just like a random date you throw in there?
My birthday is March 20th, so I it had to be a Monday because they went there on a Friday. They stayed through the weekend. But when I was just like, what date do I use? I just picked my birthday. So it's something. It's like the alarm numbers, like the 2342, the code that doesn't work. Those are two of the lost numbers. 4, 8, 15, 23, 42. So that was one reason. And then the 8587 is my birthday and my wife's birthday year as well. So it's just kind of like, stupid things that you just pull out.
Yeah, that makes sense. And in your own words, why do you think everybody should watch Superhost?
I think it's fun. I think there's a lot of horror movies that are very serious, very dark. My first two films are like that. They're very oppressive and they make you feel like crap. And I think it's fun to just kind of come out of summer, come out of COVID, and have sort of like a roller coaster that you can watch and just enjoy yourself, And it gets to the point where you're rooting for the bad guy at the end. And I think just sort of as a viewer, your relationship with the characters is kind of fun to watch, where you go, you kind of, your morals kind of lower as you watch it because of who these people are. And by the end, you're kind of, it might surprise you who you're rooting for.
Yeah, that's very well put. It's definitely a fun watch, and we definitely enjoyed it. And what other projects do you have coming up?
There's a chance I'll be shooting another one in the next few months. It's a little bit different, still horror. It's kind of like a campus slasher, Final Destination, supernatural twist type of film. So a little bit bigger cast, more locations, kind of a broader scope. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be, I think the script's really cool. I wrote it with my brother. It seems like 99% that'll be the next thing I do.
And where can people keep up on you online?
My Instagram is the Brandon Christensen, and my Twitter handle is the Brandon C85. They had a character limit.
Yeah, again, Drew and I are big fans of Superhost, and everybody should definitely check it out on Shudder. It was a pleasure talking to you, and hopefully we'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks for having me, guys. It was awesome.
Thanks to all the horror hounds and smokers out there for tuning in. Thanks to Brandon Christensen for joining us today. Again, we can't stress enough to make sure you watch this film. And if you got to this far and haven't watched it yet, we told you multiple times now, so shame on you. And make sure to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and TikTok at HighOnHorror420. You can email us at highonhorror420@gmail.com. And check out our website, highonhorror.com. And you can sign up for our newsletter while you're there, and you can get our guest announcements and newest episodes delivered directly into your inbox. And we got to thank Josh for editing this episode especially. Drew and I went a little too hard into paint and got a little too baked, and he had a lot of editing on his hands with this episode. Well, that'll about wrap her up. Catch yous later.
Bye, everybody.